what's up?
Great. Hello. Welcome. We are at my house today for once. Because Ginny was over here being a beautiful fairy dancer that she is for Tummy Tuesday that happens at Max's Positive Vibes, which is a sweet little restaurant spot, and belly dancers take it over once a month on Tuesdays.
Yeah. I did a little ditty, and it's crazy how much makeup I have on, and still the camera flattens it. Put on all the makeup in the world.
I think it looks great.
Glam. Wait, is this eyelash falling apart? No.
No. Perfect.
Cool.
Great.
Okay.
Great. So, we are here again to discuss The Artist's Way. So we'll be checking in about last week, which was all about abundance, and then coming up on our next week, which is recovering a sense of connection. Connection, which, as usual, was very synchronistic based on the conversation that we were having before about just kind of what we're experiencing and how our week has been, and this seems like the perfect medicine. Because checking in again about last week, I was telling Ginny that I didn't do my pages once. Not once. Which is the worst.
But you showed up for this meeting.
I showed up for the meeting, and I'm ready to recover a sense of connection for myself. So again, it's really, as long as, you keep showing up and allow things to guide you along, it really will. It'll bring you back. Something will get you.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
that's why we're here together, to support each other through those types of things. Yeah.
I think I did, once again, 5 out of 7, because on Friday, I was preparing for a show, and I really should have, but I decided not to, and I ran away and camped at a friend's house. We played a lot of Mario Party. It got really competitive. There's this little mini game called Slapperazzi where you had to try and get into the camera and slap people out of the way, and whoever was the most in the camera won, and I really liked it.
Sounds fun.
And then so that was fun. And then Saturday, I think I would have benefited so much more had I done my pages, because I think my focus and my stress levels would have been lower because I would have digested my plan and really figured out the priorities of the situation. And I always tend to freak out in situation as soon as something goes wrong and there's a time crunch. So no matter how prepared I was, of course things went wrong, and it wasn't bad, of course, because I have a little bit more perspective than my first time I did this. But at the same time, I know I would have been a lot better at controlling my short responses to people had I prepared myself mentally. Right.
And I mean, the effects that I'm feeling from not doing my pages are, generally kind of a state of confusion and, lack of focus, lack of clarity, just a general unease that I haven't felt in a while, and I attribute a lot of that to this work along with other self-care things that I have been letting slip. But yeah, I mean, having the wherewithal at this point to say, hey, I notice that I feel worse, right? And taking full responsibility for that, not blaming it on other people or things that are out of your control, but, really acknowledging the things that are in your control that you didn't do that could have helped you feel better in these different situations. It's really empowering. Even when you're not in your best, at your best, or feeling your best, it's empowering to know there are things that I could have done and can do to make this better.
Totally. And it's totally about awareness too for me, because my old self would be like, I don't know why I'm irate today. I would just be angry at people and expect them to deal with it, and then to deal with my emotions. And then this process is now really helps me to start metabolizing what I am actually feeling and where it's coming from.
Yeah, and taking responsibility for it. Huge.
So just a different way you say things, like, hey, I'm feeling really off today. I haven't been focusing. Here's me telling you this first off. That definitely makes situations a lot better, for sure.
Yeah, I don't think it ever excuses,
Mm-mm.
you know? I mean, that's the thing, like,
Yeah.
I didn't do my pages, so now I have the right to be an a-hole to everybody. No.
No. Totally get that too.
Yeah, but definitely, being aware of how you're feeling and sharing that is always a good thing.
Did you do an artist date this week?
Did I do an artist date this week? No.
I at least did my long walk and then did my, I take these really long sprawling walks when I can. I find that I can't fit them in every day, and that's okay. You don't have to do your artist date every day. But these are my true artist dates, and I go on these long walks, and then as I'm thinking about things and listening to music and stuff, I start to pull things out from trees and bushes and off the ground and stuff, and assemble them together and find meaning in it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then this time I also did like a little bit of wax pouring divination. I poured wax onto some some leaves, and then waited for it to cool and peeled it off the leaves.
Whoa.
And looked at the shapes to see what meaning I could find.
Cool.
And going into that, and I actually inspired a whole drawing that I ended up making from it. But going into that, it's really interesting the symbols that your brain sees and then starts to create meaning out of it. And that, I mean, I think, but I also, my artist dates are happening from 9 p.m. to 12 a.m. They're not during the day, but I think that's when I can get some me time, for sure. And it's extended.
I can too, and I'm gonna be taking a lot more of it than I have been.
Even though you're tired the next day, I feel like it's a worthy sacrifice.
Totally.
Sometimes that fatigue, but then you had such a good night the night before, it powers you through it, and then you take a nap and everything's better.
Awesome. Yeah. And any synchronicity of note?
Yeah, definitely about abundance.
Yes,
last week's thoughts just led to all these new abundance thoughts, and I'm like, man, we have so much. And even if things are bad, we have so much of it.
Yeah,
abundance always exists.
For sure. Yeah, I sat down and was telling Ginny I did really looked at my value system in a different way. So after our meeting last week, and we were talking a lot about that stuff, as I kind of wrote down, one of the exercises for last week was to really pay attention to what you spend money on. So I didn't track it exactly like I did when we went through this the first time, but what I did is I kind of made a broad list of the things that I spend money on, and then correlated that to what I actually value. So just really getting clear about abundance not being about money and having that and buying these things, because it's not the things that I actually value, it's some of the things that they represent. So like I said, caffeine, I still haven't been drinking coffee, but I still go and buy $5 green tea lattes and that sort of thing. And but what I actually value is having energy, being creative and productive and contributing, and none of those things require me to actually spend money or have money, so just really getting clear about what abundance looks like. Is it an abundance of these things that I value: health, vitality, playfulness, radiance, movement, mobility, these things that having money can allow for, but isn't necessary for. Just being really clear about that.
That's a good perspective, especially if you're actually in the budgeting process too. If you are trying to move money around, like my husband and I have paid off all of our debt, and it was through a similar process. Actually, that's where we had to begin, is think about what is required payments, what is the extra payments, and then actually coming up with your values of what do I need to invest in. And so for me, I definitely had to pay for dance. That was a big thing that we had to make sacrifices for, and I think it paid off a lot for me. And then my husband he's really into outdoor equipment and stuff like that, and he definitely budgets for those things too, those tools and stuff. So we had different things that we both did, but then other things like going out to movies, that budget went down way low. Going out to eat is still way too high but and we don't feel guilty about it at the moment. We just look at our record and go, okay, well, this week.
Right, and well, looking at that, and what is it about doing that activity that you actually value? What is it that you're getting out of that? It's probably connection to each other, but
honestly,
also
time after you're being tired. So, but then realizing that if we both cook together, it takes less time.
Yeah, or like prepping.
Yeah,
And...
like we cook. I cook a lot of you don't eat meat, but I cook a lot of our meat on the weekend, and then we can put it in meals throughout the week.
Yeah.
Especially because Kevin just like gets so tired and fatigued quickly. He eats a lot more protein than he used to. But yeah, just doing little shortcuts like that, and then it's like, well, we have food. Just gotta go eat it. Sometimes we don't want to even make the sandwich, but.
Right. Yeah, but so awesome. Last week was really potent, and I'm excited to move forward and recover my sense of connection to myself, to this process.
Hold that open.
Onward.
Onward.
Onward. Yeah. So.
All right. Do you want to begin with recovering a sense of connection, or do you want me to begin?
Are you going to talk about listening?
You're right, I am. I'm backwards today. That's fine. Thank you. Okay, listening. Thank you.
Hey, I'm right there with you,
Current
girl.
events.
With you, girl.
Okay, so listening is a really interesting way to approach the chapter. And, normally when you think of listening, you're like, you should, as a better conversationalist, you should listen to someone else and stuff. So it's an interesting perspective that she brings to the word, where you are the conduit for your art. You are actually not the creator for your art. This is a really good mental exercise that I feel takes a lot of stress and guilt off of you, the artist, when you start to say, well, I'm not making this, I'm pulling it from something else. In the same way, listening here, when I was doing my wax divination this week, I found this little blob that looked like a man standing on a boat, and there was another like little spot above and below that looked like these different moons. And then I saw that, so I was listening of something that was created by chance, and then I illustrated it a little bit more in detail to define what I see to someone else. Cool. And I have a picture I can put up of like the two side by side that I'll put on my Instagram later. I've just been forgetful of that.
That's awesome.
And so that was my act of listening, was not being the original creator. I feel like as anyone who's working with any form of art, allowing the idea to come down without necessarily taking ownership of it. Like, I'm happy to say that I saw something from the blobs that were created. Mm-hmm. My brain made it into a different image. And that's the same way moving into this process, that I really think that you'll start to realize that if you can see things that way, there's infinite sources. If you're reading a book and then do an exercise in which you come up with an image and that correlates to the book that you see, that's synchronicity right there again. And that's a sign that that's what you should use. I feel like that's what synchronicity is always pointing us. Like, it's the same thing as deja vu, right? Mm-hmm. Like, if you've had deja vu, that's a chance to step back and think about the moment that you're in, because you've just experienced it twice. And that's a sign that maybe you should, it's always over the small things, right? Deja vu. And that it's just such a reminder to be mindful. But it's these different signals that we're getting. So I'll give you guys a couple quotes from this this little mini section, and then Sarah actually has a book recommendation that we also saw a TED Talk for, so there's a lot of correlation right here. And this, actually, before we even got into this chapter, I was talking about this, how she says here, when a painter is painting, he or she may begin with a plan, but that plan is soon surrendered to the painting's own plan, which is so true. Like, going into it and understanding that your original plan is just a part of the process, and it will change, as it should. It'll be a lot more interesting. Else the plan is the work. If you feel like the plan is where it's done, right, then that plan may be the work, and that's a whole nother realm of art right there. But that's a possibility too. But we are more the conduit than the creator of what we express. Art is an act of tuning in and dropping down the well. And then what you're doing with all of these things, you're writing, your artist dates, is you're filling that well. And so every once in a while, when you choose to engage, you have so much to pull from. You're not fatigued, you're not tired, you're not blocked.
Mm-hmm.
So during the process right now, you are tuning in, you are listening, as long as you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then
yeah, it almost makes creating like a prayer.
yes.
You know, every moment along the way, you're just asking to be guided, and asking for, you know, the higher order to come through you, and it makes it very meditative.
And she even says at the end of this section, expect the universe to support your dream. It will. It's so true. If you just expect that if I'm doing things in line with my intention and my purpose here, things will come together.
You do have to surrender that idea or the notion that you know better, or, you know, that it's your artistic genius, that is, you know, if you're thinking about the outcome or the accolades or the, you know, any of that.
Oh yes, the fame, the things like that. Realizing that maybe the value you see in a piece might not be what your friends see in a piece. That's not, the universe is still providing you the opportunity to learn, to grow, to make mistakes. Only get feedback if you feel like it's necessary, but normally it's not at this point in our process. At this point we're just making. And I guess the positives of some things like Instagram is that, you know, you can get the attention from other people who might be in the same line of or vein of interest that are not your friends. And that might be the community that actually feeds you more right now. Yeah, so if you did want, but you don't to get hung up in the fame, but just to reach out for connection, I definitely think.
Yeah, I mean, sharing is part of it.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's part of what fills us up. So the book that Ginnie mentioned is by Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love. That was kind of her claim to fame. And then after that, she gave a TED Talk talking about the same concept. And I think it's called Your Elusive Creative Genius. And she talks about genius being an external, like, kind of muse that visits you as an artist on occasion. And ideas as well as kind of, you know, they have their own spirit and will as well, and they're kind of buzzing around above, you know, trying to find an artist host to come down and kind of bring it to life. And that how, when you think of it this way, it's much healthier, because on both ends, not only do you not get as caught up when things are really successful, you also don't get caught up when they fail and feel like you're a failure. You know, you can kind of be like, well, my genius didn't show up, I guess, you know. It's like, I did my part. Exactly. The genius has to show up and make it something really amazing. So it just takes that like responsibility. Perfect synchronicity, right? Because she says, she's like, well, I showed up. You know? Yeah. Olé!
Yeah.
Olé for showing up. Yeah. Go watch the TED Talk. And then the book, she wrote a whole book around that concept called Big Magic. So I definitely recommend it. I love her. I just follow all of her work. She's just like really lovely. I haven't read her like Eat, Pray, Love, and her novels. She just put out, we're about to publish another one though that I'm pretty interested in. But yeah, just like her social media stuff that she posts, and she's done a couple TED Talks now.
So she might be a great one to follow to support your own goals too.
Yeah,
she sees that way.
Totally, she's very much in line with this process, and she likes to talk about creativity just like we do.
Yay!
And you know, she's very eloquent and has a really nice and interesting perspective. So, I recommend her for sure. Which also kind of takes us to our next section, which is talking about perfectionism. So I think, you know, taking that idea of the genius part of our work being something almost, you know, thinking of it externally, that it's not on us to make brilliant, genius, perfect work. It's on us to make work. And she really, in this book, emphasizes that though we trick ourselves into thinking that perfectionism is about standards and you know, just doing things to our best ability, that it is a trap, it's a trick, and it's its own form of resistance that tells us that, you know, we're never going to be good enough, it's never going to be finished, and it really prevents us from moving forward, doing the work and getting it out there. So, you know, I think that I am definitely definitely guilty of this. And I think it does manifest more in the work that I don't do, right? I mean, once I start doing something, I'm okay for the most part, usually with kind of getting it out and sending it off and letting it do its thing. But there are so many things that I would like to do or think would be interesting or, admire, but then have this thing telling me that I wouldn't be able to do it well enough for it to be worth doing at all. Right, but so I love this quote that she shares from Miles Davis: "Do not fear mistakes; there are none." And I think if we can just give ourselves that gift, right, of always being a work in progress, our artistic, even when we put out a completed work, it's one work in the work of your life, and it is, you are a work in progress, always growing and always moving forward, but you have to take those steps. You have to kind of decide that where you are and who you are right now is enough to share. And
you are valid. You like there's a big thing in all forms of the artistic community where there's a lot of like people making imposters of others and newbies and stuff and saying like you can't be accepted, and some of that is also like an inner fear that we have that might not actually exist in the community, so you have to examine that. True. But sometimes it's true. Sometimes we have some older school people who have gone through the I would say stereotypical process of like self-destruction to get to what they want, and then you being a healthy member coming in and accepting that you're learning and starting something new. To some of the older community especially, or young as well, it's like if you haven't done the pain, if you haven't gone through that, then you can't be worthy of this yet.
Yeah, like how dare you have the audacity to come in and be imperfect and be okay with it.
Yes, and be okay with it. That's such a good way to like there is like this sense of perfection. But in reality we realize that most people don't really care about perfectionism. The people who are actually enjoying the art often, I mean, in this inner perfectionism, she really gets into it. She says it right here, which I underlined only one thing on this page that hit me, which was, in reality, it is egotism.
Yes. Exactly.
And then, there's definitely different forms saying, I'm not ready to do this exact dance or performance yet. But to say I can't do it at all, or I can't even learn it because my hands don't move the right way. Or
even I agree with that wholeheartedly, and I see it in myself and all the time, is that trick that by that humility, or what you perceive as humility, is about pride and about ego, and it takes much more humility to bare your soul regardless of the imperfections or the criticism that may come. I mean, you have to, like, to share your art ever is the greatest act of humility, I think.
And trust that, like, hey, regardless, I know I will reach someone, or I know I'm reaching myself, and having someone else see this is a bravery, but I am allowed to be brave. And then like no one can take that away from you.
Yeah, definitely. So.
Which goes right into risk.
Perfect.
So she opens up risk with a question. What would I do if I didn't have to do it perfectly? And the answer is a great deal more than I am now. And it's true. Like without fear. She says here, like, a common thing is people say, I'll look like an idiot.
That's pride, ego.
Pride and ego again. But I've underlined some other things. We deny that in order to do something well, we must first be willing to do it badly. And I think that comes down to being willing to be a student, really at its heart.
And that is an uncomfortable thing to be sometimes. Let me tell you. Yes. I've been going through it this week.
And you can definitely say, I'm a student, I think, too. You could, like, I feel like that's an appropriate thing to say. Like, I am a student of this and that. I'm a...
Always. I
Yeah.
feel like I'll always be saying that about anything that I study or
Yeah.
even things that I teach. I do think, like,
Yeah.
even when I teach dance classes, I still usually preface it with, I'm facilitating this class. I'm happy to share what I have learned so far on my journey, but I'm absolutely still a student, and anything that
Yeah.
you bring to the table, you can be a teacher in this space
Totally.
as well.
And I mean, I get that from my own students too. If they correct me, I go, "Oh, interesting. Can you share me that link? Because I'm interested to learn more." Or, you know, sometimes there's old information that, especially with teachers, get stuck around forever, even though it's been disproven for like 20 years. So we won't do something unless we can guarantee that we'll do it perfectly. This is a really common thing. As a person who teaches high school art students too, I've had a lot of students who've been, I think the word is schooled out of creativity. So there's a lot of fear of, well, I'm not going to try this drawing thing because I know I can't do it perfectly. I can only draw a stick man. I can only draw a stick man. I'm like, stick mans are hard. Like, oh, like, we all start there. Allow yourself to be a student and move forward.
Sorry, my cat has claws and she uses them too frequently.
And we all have strengths. We all have something good we can say too. And so I really feel that, you know, that's just my own little thing. But
no, it's important.
Hearing it from our, you know, 14 and 15-year-olds, I hear it from my 6th graders too. I teach 6th through 11th grade right now. And I'm just like, these are the words that they're learned from their parents. Like, I think probably at kindergarten, there was no doubt that they could draw. They were like, I'm the best colorer here.
Like, look, I have a thing. It's making a mark. I'm drawing. Like, I can do it. I mean, and that's really...
And I just know from my own experience, echoing of things that other people have said, and then until it becomes true, or not giving the recognition from the teacher. And so thus saying, well, I must be bad at math because I'm not getting recognized for my mediocreness. Doesn't mean that I'm not, this means I'm not excellent, but, you know, I'm certainly not bad. You know, different things that we build up just... And that's where I think this whole process really feeds into, start to hear that voice. We're listening, and then we're taking risks, and don't be afraid to try.
Yeah, definitely. And this next section is about jealousy, which I think is part of what prompts other people to criticize. You know, is because she talks about how it's, well, when we notice our jealousy, or I guess it wouldn't just be jealousy. I guess I'm also thinking of when people feel like they can do something better. It's really not about you. Like, if they're judging you, criticizing you, and thinking they could do it better, what that is impulse that they have to be creative and that they're not pursuing typically, right? But jealousy is another way of, you know, anytime you're looking externally and making judgments or comparisons, good or bad, because, right, I guess jealousy would be the opposite way of comparing yourself to somebody else, where you decide that they're better, right? And you are jealous of that. In that instance, that is also pointing you to an impulse that you have to do that thing, right? It's a beautiful guide and map to what you think is awesome and what you value.
And people are so willing to share their process and strengths of how they got to that level. That's a great way to make connection in the community and find someone that will often want to help you because they've been there. It's just to openly ask. I remember my sister-in-law, when I was opening my jewelry business, she said, oh, well, the biggest tip I can give you is to start asking around other people, asking for their advice. And I talked to some big level fantasy jewelry makers on Instagram. I just messaged them, and they were happy to share. I wasn't asking about trade secrets or designs. I was asking, like, do you have any advice on creating a successful, like, customer flow? And because I'm not trying to be their competition, and they were really quite honest and like, hey, you know, eventually when you're in like the handmade art business, things might get to be too much, and which is true.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much you can make with your hands.
And she was like, even if you hire an assistant sometimes. But, you know, I think acknowledging that jealousy and then maybe overcoming it to, like, ask, like, how'd you do that? And if people are jealous towards you and do that weird superiority thing and say, like, I could do that better, be like, oh, that'd be great. I would like to see that. Like, can you show me some of your work? I'm actually really interested. Like, they're like, I can fuse this better. I can do this better. I'm like, okay, I want to see it.
Great.
Let me learn.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is with even some of the best artists that there very well may be a couple hundred people who could do what they're doing better than they could, but they're not doing it. So
they have the audacity. That's right. They are doing it.
Yeah.
And that's what we're here. We're just doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. But, you know, so I think it's such a lovely point that she makes to take something like jealousy, which has such a negative connotation and, you know, a lot of shame around it, actually. You know, it's something that, oh, you're you have jealousy, that's, you know, it's like, oh,
and it seethes and it like stays with you and becomes like, what's the word? Not toxic. It can be, yeah, toxic. I was thinking about something else, but yeah, toxic will work. It's good.
Yeah.
It's a good word.
I don't know what you were going for,
yeah.
But yeah, no, it's something that is something that we would maybe, if we felt it, would maybe just want to turn away from because it is
or
embarrassing.
Not even try to process it.
Right, and not look at what it's pointing to, what it's trying to tell you, what the lesson is, and how you can integrate that and use it. But, you know, thinking of it this way, what am I jealous of? What is it that I want to be doing that I'm not doing or that I think is really awesome that I could be working on for myself and doing that?
And she gives you an exercise on actually how to use your jealousies and stuff. I think especially in our culture of women, we have so much, like, we talk so much behind each other's backs. Like, that's, I think maybe whatever you have tried to talk about, like, or gossip about with someone else, maybe that's a good place to start with jealousy. If you feel this urge to talk about it, then that's probably the thing that you need to investigate, because you can't even bottle it in anymore. You just have to, like, so start with the surface level things first, and you'll often find that they're pointing at something.
Yeah. Yep. But it all comes back to that awareness, that self-awareness, and your pages are a great place for those things to come out so that you can process them.
And I think the rest of the steps this week, the tasks now, are just focused on that as well. I think she goes into archaeology, and then there's a lot of other digging into your past, and then working with mantras again. Ooh, sacred space. I think this is when she starts to do that. We start to find sacred spaces in our own house, and we're going to start to create those. Yeah, and I think this was our first collage too.
And now I have a whole box full of magazines and photos collected for collaging.
You have to do it. I should bring mine in next week and show I have a big sprawling collage and every time I look at it, it reminds me that I want, like, some more nature in my home. And this week Lidl actually had ivy for sale.
Nice.
Which was really nice. And it had its own little pot of soil, and that was kind of really what I bought it for. It was like, it's already nurtured in its own pot of soil. All I have to do is sit up in the window and put some water on it now and again.
Yeah, no, that's what I love. Putting houseplants in, it's really, really nourishing to have that, like, life and green. And
I didn't even realize that I wanted some actual nature, not fake nature, until I did that collage. I was like, oh, this is what I like.
Yeah. Awesome. So have fun with your exercises, and we'll do our final card pull, see what comes up for us.
When we started today, we pulled from the traditional deck of tarot and had a Four of Wands, which is read as like magic and stability, and this is a stable thing for both of us too. I feel for it. Right here.
That's my little song for
Messenger of Air. Oh, she's so pretty. I'm gonna hold her. Let me find my book. So this is, what number? Is there a number? We are before numbers. Can't be.
I don't see a number.
It's gonna take me a minute then. Where'd you go? Oh, no, she's in air.
Why no number?
Nope.
Because she would be like a court card.
Yeah,
Messenger.
there's an air. There's a page of
messenger.
air. Messenger of air. Okay.
So that's like the knight in
Yeah.
the tradition.
Opinions informed by experience. Adherence to dogma. Allegiance to a way of thinking or acting. A learned response. Subconscious programming and swift reactions or responses. I need to broaden my perspective. The well, right there. I am reacting to a situation from my past. I have to think about whether I want to do things the old way or respond differently this time. This directly relates to those activities that you're doing, these tasks. I can adapt a new way of thinking and behaving. True. If I am swift and move quickly, ensuring my actions are for the highest good, positive outcomes are assured.
There you have it.
That's some hardcore synchronicity too. It's just really, I interpret that being all about this process.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the breaking down of old thought patterns and reprogramming, and but also I think it alludes to not just when reprogramming when you're writing and excavating, but then practicing that so that it becomes natural to respond out of your highest self and like who you're trying to be. So I mean that really comes from disciplined practice of reprogramming, repetition, and being present in each moment throughout your day, because however you're typically responding, it's like you might say this is how I want to be, but if you keep being triggered by other things in your environment and falling back into old habits of responding and communicating and being, then those are going to be the neural pathways that get strengthened and
and
carved out.
It all starts with awareness too, right?
Yep.
Showing up, doing the work, and then choosing to recognize it when the patterns happen.
So here we go. Have a great week and best of luck. Reach out if you have any questions. Please share your experience in the comments if you feel inspired, and we'll catch you next time.
I'm gonna turn you off now. I gotta